Hello Army, welcome back to your home for the hottest, most electrifying, and most unpredictable stories coming straight out of the BTS universe. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button, because tonight's update isn't just news, it's a turning point. A moment that is shaking the entire fandom to its core. For years, rumors have circled, theories have piled up, and silence has dominated every conversation involving Taehyung and Jungkook. But tonight, everything changed. A day that began quietly has turned into one of the most chaotic and unforgettable moments in global fandom history. Because HYBE finally broke its silence, and what they revealed wasn't just unexpected. It was explosive. The moment HYBE's midnight announcement went live, the industry froze. Reporters stopped mid-sentence. Social media timelines glitched from the sheer volume of reactions. Fanbases worldwide paused, rewound, zoomed in, reread, and still couldn't believe what they were seeing. The statement wasn't long, but it was enough. Enough to hint, enough to shake, enough to make the entire world question everything they thought they understood about Taehyung and Jungkook. Within minutes, two names shot to the top of the global trends with impossible speed: Taehyung and Jungkook. Clips from the past resurfaced instantly: glances, moments, quiet interactions, small gestures fans had analyzed for years. Suddenly, all of them looked different under the shadow of HYBE's cryptic message. The fandom didn't sleep. The internet didn't slow. And inside HYBE's building, the tension was thick enough to cut through. Employees rushed through hallways, speaking in hushed voices, trying to guess how the storm had begun. Some were convinced the announcement was part of a master plan. Others believed HYBE had been forced into it by outside pressure. And a few felt the timing was too sharp, too intentional, as if something bigger was happening behind the scenes. But no one in that building knew the real story. Because the real story was happening miles away, in two separate apartments, in two separate rooms, with two people who had lived inside the same unspoken truth for years. Taehyung saw the statement the moment he woke up. His room was still dark, and the glow of his phone washed across his face as he read the message once, twice, 3 times. Not because he didn't understand it, but because he knew exactly what it would create. A wave. A wildfire. A moment that would break open everything the world had been waiting to push for years. He didn't panic. He didn't crumble. He simply breathed out, steady and controlled, and whispered into the stillness. It begins. Across the city, Jungkook was already awake. Something had nudged him moments before the announcement dropped, like intuition trying to warn him. When he opened his phone and saw their names dominating every corner of the internet, he froze for a second. Then he read the statement, felt the weight settle, and accepted it with a calm that came only from years under the spotlight. There was no fear in his expression. No regret. Just a quiet certainty. Both of them had known this day would come eventually, not the details, not the timing, but the shift. The moment where silence would no longer be enough to protect them. And now that it had arrived, they felt something they hadn't expected. Relief. As morning hit, HYBE buzzed like a pressure cooker ready to burst. Departments scrambled, strategists drafted responses, and the entire building prepared for every possible disaster. But they hadn't predicted what Taehyung and Jungkook would do next. Because while the company was preparing statements, the two of them were preparing something else entirely. Before noon, Taehyung picked up his phone and sent a message that carried years of weight in just 2 words. "Are you ready?" Jungkook saw it instantly. A slow smile spread across his lips, not because he had an answer, but because he understood the meaning behind the question. It wasn't about HYBE. It wasn't about the fans. It was about the moment they both knew was coming. He typed back. "If it's us, then yes." And with that, everything began to move. Hours later, Taehyung found himself standing by his window, staring out at a city that had no idea what was about to unfold. Silence had once been his shield, his way of protecting the pieces of himself he refused to show the world. But today, that silence felt like a cage. And he knew it was time to break it. Across the city, Jungkook walked through a quiet neighborhood with his hood up, trying to escape the noise flooding the internet. He wasn't running away, he was walking toward clarity. Toward something that had lived between them for years. When he reached the riverside, he finally breathed freely. HYBE's statement had opened the door. But what came next, that was up to them. Scrolling through their messages, Jungkook typed 2 new words. "Where are you?" Taehyung replied instantly with a single word. "Come." And a location. A rooftop only they knew, a place tied to laughter, late-night confessions, and moments no camera had ever captured. Minutes later, Taehyung stepped onto that rooftop, the sky shifting to gold as evening approached. He stood at the edge, remembering every moment that had brought them here. Then the rooftop door opened, and he heard footsteps, soft, familiar, unmistakable. Jungkook approached him, breath visible in the cooling air, expression raw and unguarded. For a long moment, they simply stood there. No words. No noise. Only the weight of the world below them and the quiet between them. Finally, Jungkook whispered. "So, what now?" Taehyung turned, eyes steady. "Now we decide. Not the world. Us." Jungkook swallowed hard. "Are you sure?" Taehyung didn't glance away. "I'm done hiding." What followed wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, honest, and heavier than anything they had faced in years. Jungkook pulled out his phone. "If we speak in our own words. Not theirs." Taehyung stepped closer. "Show me." Jungkook opened a blank draft and typed the first sentence. "There are things we can't stay silent about anymore." Taehyung's chest tightened. Not from fear, from release. Jungkook added. "Some things matter more than silence." The air around them stilled. The city lights blurred. And when Taehyung placed a steady hand on Jungkook's arm, grounding him, he whispered. "You're not alone." Jungkook breathed deeply, then typed the final line. "We're speaking for ourselves now." He didn't post it yet. Not until Taehyung leaned closer, voice barely above a breath. "Together." Jungkook looked at him one last time. "Once I do this, there's no going back." Taehyung stepped into his space, eyes burning with certainty. "I don't want to go back." And finally, Taehyung said the 2 words that would change everything.